Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hello, Jessica Donovan here. Welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you listening in today. I hope you are well. And today we've got quite a practical episode. I want to talk to you about how to boost the nutrition of your family meals. If you're anything like me, you get a lot of joy from watching your kids gobble up nutritionally rich food, meals, snacks. And as parents, we have to get a bit creative to get more nourishment into our kids' meals and snacks. One, because a lot of kids are fussy, and two, because the nutrient needs of children is higher than that of adults, sort of per kilogram of body weight. So because kids are still developing, their nutrient needs are quite high. And paired with the fact that the nutrient levels in kids' diets has declined, there's a kind of a gap there that needs to be filled. And yes, we can look to supplements to fill those gaps, but I always like to look at food first and how we can generally increase that nutrition in the food that our family is eating. And that can benefit us as mums as well. Making small changes that I'm going to talk about today to your everyday meals can boost nutrition without your kids even knowing about it, without drastic overhauls, without too much effort on your part. So I'm hoping that the things that I talk about today are going to, at least some of them become a habit for you. And so, me sharing this information can help hopefully hundreds and hundreds of families, nourish their kids that little bit better. And that's what we're all about here at Natural Super Kids, another step in the right direction when it comes to health and when it comes to nutrition. The other thing that can happen when we boost the nutrition of family meals, particularly with the tips that I'm going to share with you today, is it can help expand the palate of our kids, whether they're fussy or picky. It can help them to develop different likings to different tastes and textures and that sort of thing. And we know that certain nutrient deficiencies, for example, zinc and iron, can lead to more fussy and picky eating as well. So when we're getting more nutrients into our kids' diets, they naturally become more more open to eating different sorts of foods and not so fussy. And of course, nutrition is the building block of our kids' bodies, of their brain. So, nutrients power the immune system. They power brain development. Nutrients power gut microbiome development as well. And obviously the growth and development of our kids overall. So it's super important. And I hope you're as excited as I am about getting more nutrition into your kids. So the first thing I want to talk about is diversity. Now, I've talked about this in various ways before on the podcast, in masterclasses. If you're a club member, you've probably heard me talk about diversity as well. When we get more diversity, more variety into our kids' diet, it helps us cover off more of those nutrient bases. So different foods will contain different nutrients. So if we get more variety in, we're, naturally going to be covering more of those nutrient needs. The other thing is more diversity in the diet helps improve diversity in the gut microbiome. And that is important for so many reasons, one of which being the absorption of nutrients through the gut. And so when we've got that nice, healthy, diverse gut microbiome, it benefits the, absorbability of nutrients, but it also improves and benefits our kids' immune system, their brain health, their overall digestive function as well. So this is the first thing to focus on. How can we get more variety, more diversity into our kids' diets? And we can do this in a variety of different ways. So we can, we all get stuck in a bit of a rut, don't we, when it comes to grabbing the same fruits and vegetables and the same, flour that we might cook with, or, the same snacks off the supermarket shelves at the farmer's market. So when you are next shopping, think about, how can I add variety to the family's diet this week? Can I make a different meal for dinner? Can we try a different breakfast rather than the same old breakfast that we have every other single week? So just think about how you can add variety overall. And a couple of, ideas that I've got for you. Rotating grains. So often we get a bit stuck in a rut. As I said, with the types of grains that we use, we might, cook the same pasta, the same rice, bake with the same wheat flour, or even if it's a healthier flour like a spelt flour. How can we mix that up a bit? How can we maybe add in some spelt, some buckwheat, some quinoa, some legume-based pastas to change things up a bit in terms of those regular foods that we are serving and cooking with? Using different flours as well. So rather than just the same old wheat flour or the same old spelt flour, how can we add in some almond flour, some coconut flour, some chickpea flour, some rice flour, just to name a few? And if you are a Natural Super Kids Club member, we've got lots of, recipes in there for you to try that, where we're cooking and baking and utilizing different flours. And that can really help to even, regulate blood sugar levels and things if we're using those higher protein flours such as almond flour or chickpea flour as an example. And then, that leads on to, something similar, swap or mix up the types of carbs that kids are eating. We know kids generally love carbs. They might love potatoes, rice, that sort of thing. How can we use different varieties of rice? Maybe mixing some quinoa into the rice that we're making. Could we use different types of potatoes, sweet potatoes, or different varieties of white potatoes even? So think about how you can, change things up a bit by choosing different foods off of the supermarket shelves and off the farmer's market as well. Fruits and vegetables are another good option to try this out on, rather than just picking the same old apples, pears, bananas, for example. How can we add in some other seasonal fruits? And taking a trip to the farmer's market can really help you with this, because there might be some different fruits that are in season in your local area that you might not find in the supermarket or might not stand out as much in the supermarket. So variety is key, and I think I've got that point across, and hopefully those, practical tips can help. Actually, I will also just mention, we've talked a lot about variety in plant foods, but also in your proteins as well. So, rather than just having chicken and beef, for example, can you add in some turkey or some kangaroo or some pork? Like, choose a different protein this week coming up, because that will always have a different nutrient profile as well. We know, like, if you're in Australia, kangaroo is readily available now in the supermarkets. It is highly nutritious. It's higher in iron and a lot of other nutrients than things like beef are as well. And they're naturally farmed as well. I know a lot of people don't like the idea of eating kangaroo, but, they're not sort of fed on an artificial diet. This is getting into a whole nother topic, but just get a bit more experimental when it comes to protein that you're eating, as well as those plant foods. Okay, another way that we can up the ante on nutrition for our kids, for our family, is by using more full fat dairy products. So if you have taken the path of, looking at skim milk or reduced fat, yogurt, those sorts of things, then I want to encourage you to go back to full fat for the nutritional value. So when we are removing the fat out of things like milk, let's think about skim milk, for example, the fat is removed or reduced. We're also taking out a lot of those fat-soluble nutrients, the vitamin A, the vitamin D, for example, which are really needed by kids. Vitamin A and vitamin D have so many benefits for our kids' immune systems, and also so much more as well. So when we're using full fat dairy products as opposed to reduced fat or low fat dairy products, we're actually increasing the nutrient intake into our family's diet. So use those full fat products and think about how you can use more of those products. And like, obviously, unless you have an issue with dairy, which I know lots of kids do, but one of the things I like to do is, for example, use a Greek yogurt as an alternative to milk when I'm cooking. So I might use a Greek yogurt in muffins or pancakes, for example. You're getting more nutrients in there. You're getting higher protein generally in there as well. And so that's a really simple, easy way to increase the nutrient intake of your kids. Using butter as opposed to a margarine or a plant-based spread, which I'm not a huge fan of. Again, as long as you don't have issues with dairy, can really help to increase the amount of nutrients that are going into your kids. So putting butter on their sandwich or their roll in their lunchbox is actually a way of boosting nutrition. And so it doesn't have to be these elaborate plates of healthy looking foods that maybe our kids might not even think about eating, that we have to think about when we're talking about boosting nutrition. Putting some butter, as I said, onto chicken and salad roll that you might pop into your kid's lunchbox, or even if it's just chicken, butter, by adding that butter in, you're giving them some fat, you're giving them some vitamin A, some vitamin D that they wouldn't have otherwise got if they didn't have that butter in there. So think about adding those dairy products into meals you're already making, or switching, for example, like I said, from the milk to the yogurt, can help to increase that nutrient intake as well. Okay, I want to talk about a couple of secret extra ingredients that I always have in my pantry that I add to meals that my kids don't even know about. So one of them is a beef liver powder. My 15-year-old daughter, she knows it's in the pantry. She doesn't know that it gets added into her spaghetti bolognese that she gobbles up. This is such a good way to get extra iron and extra vitamin A as two examples of some of the nutrients that a beef liver powder is, really rich in. So this is a great tip if your kids tend to have low iron or iron deficiency because of that iron content in something like a beef liver powder. But also for extra minerals and vitamins like vitamin A, which a lot of kids can be, deficient in or need additional of if they are struggling with things like immunity issues, for example. So beef liver powder is great, and I promise your kids won't even know that it's in their spaghetti bolognese or their shepherd's pie or their lasagna. So it's a really easy one to add to foods that kids typically like to eat. Taco mince or slow-cooked taco meat is another good option as well. So you can buy it in tubs. And just don't go too crazy with it. Like you only want to add a little bit and then see how that goes down. If you add too much, it can have a little bit of a grainy sort of texture. So yeah, you just want to add like, I don't know, to like a big pot. We generally make a big pot of, say, for example, spaghetti bolognese that will last us a couple of meals. And I would put in a couple of like heaped tablespoons into like a really big, quite a big batch of spaghetti bolognese. But you might want to start with a little bit less just to make sure no one in the family is sort of picking that up. But yeah, really good for iron levels. And it's not going to be like, iron is a nutrient that you do have to be careful with, in terms of you don't want to be supplementing iron if someone isn't deficient, but this is more of that whole food supplement. So it's just going to give everyone in the family a bit of a boost of those, really important nutrients. And yeah, like I said, really handy for kids that tend to be on the low end of iron or have iron deficiency. I do just want to say it's probably not going to be enough for a child with full-blown iron deficiency. They probably need some other supplements as well, but it's a good addition to the diet, and really easy to add in. So I'm always sneakily adding a bit of beef liver powder into any sort of mince red meat meal. You can put it into casseroles, stews, soups and things as well. And it's got that sort of, meaty taste. It doesn't have a really strong liver taste like a pate or anything like that, unless you put too much of it in. If you're a Natural Super Kids Club member, we have a relatively new recipe in there. It's our pink pasta, which has some beef liver powder in it. But yeah, like I said, you can put it into bolognese. You can even put it into, burgers. If you're making your own burger patties, you can pop a bit in there as well. So really, there's lots of different ways that you can use that. The other secret ingredient that I have in my pantry is some seaweed. It might be dulse or wakame, little sprinkles of seaweed, and you can add that into meals. You can make your own seaweed crackers with it, but you can also just add it into really, really easy to add into soups. So through the winter, I tend to, add it into any sort of Japanese style soups. We like to do a soba noodle, sort of chicken noodle soup with some wakame in it. But yeah, you can add it to really anything. It has a slight sort of salty sea taste to it. So it goes really well with seafood, with Japanese food. And this is a way to increase the amount of iodine going into our kids' diets. Now, iodine is something we don't want to go overboard with, but with, again, a whole food supplement like seaweed, dulse or wakame, you can, easily just sprinkle and really increase the amount of iodine that is going into your kids' diet. Iodine really important for brain development, brain function, as well as thyroid health as well. So these tweaks, your family doesn't need to know about it. It doesn't take much, but it really does make meals much more nutritious. The beef liver powder and the seaweed flakes as well. While we're on the topic of iron, I do want to talk a little bit about protein. So I said before about like just getting more variety of different protein sources, animal protein sources into your kids' diets. And I want to talk about, the choices of protein that we make in terms of the nutrient value of those proteins. So I know a lot of families eat chicken, and there's nothing wrong with chicken. Chicken's a great source of protein, but it does lack in some of the extra nutrients that proteins such as red meat, for example, and also fish and seafood might have in them. So when we are choosing red meat over chicken, we are getting more iron, we're getting more zinc, we're getting more B12. These are nutrients that are really important for our kids. So if you're tending towards a lot of chicken dishes, then maybe you can think about how to include a bit more red meat in your family's diet. I think over the years there's been controversy that red meat is not good for us and that sort of thing. But that is, I think, very outdated information. And so including red meat in the diet regularly is a great way to ensure your kids and yourself are getting enough iron, zinc, and B12. The other thing is seafood and fish and seafood. So when we're choosing fish and seafood as an alternative to chicken, as an example, we are not only getting the protein, but we're also getting nutrients such as omega-3 and iodine, which I talked about before, which is the seafood is a good source of that as well. And again, with seafood, we don't want to just go for the same old type of fish all the time. Let's mix that up a bit. Can we, experiment with mussels and calamari and prawns and different varieties of fish that we can source, hopefully wild caught from our area where we live. And that's going to be different depending on where you live. But choosing, a variety of different protein sources is definitely a good idea. But leaning towards that red meat for the iron, zinc, B12, and towards that fish and seafood for the omega-3 and iodine can be a really good and easy way to get those nutrients into your family. The last thing I want to talk about is fibre. So fibre, we recently did an episode on fibre. So we've got a whole episode on fibre. If you want to listen to that, I'll make sure the link of it is in the show notes. But fibre is really important for digestion, for gut health, for microbiome health, and for blood sugar balance as well. And a lot of kids are lacking fibre because kids are eating more processed food, more refined food. And so a focus on fibre is always a good idea. So we can, a really good way to get more fibre in is to add legumes into meals. So things like black beans, butter beans, lentils. We can add that into meals that our family already like. So we could add black beans into a taco mince, for example. We can add chickpeas into soups, lentils into our spaghetti bolognese or our shepherd's pie. And we can just start with a little amount and gradually add it in. I think a lot of people think legumes are for vegetarian meals, but how about we add some legumes into our regular family meals? Even if we're eating meat, we can add the legumes in there for extra fibre. We can also use legumes in baking, like black bean cookies, or, adding different beans and lentils into, cookies and muffins and things like that can be a good way to include them in our kids' diets. Veggies are always going to help to increase the fibre, so adding extra veggies into things like muffins and baking. In the club, we've got a cauliflower cupcake recipe as an example. We can grate cauliflower into rice. So we've got the rice, but we can also add a bit of cauliflower into there as well. Or we can go all cauliflower rice. Adding things like chia seeds and flax seeds and hemp seeds are a great way to boost fibre as well. So we can make things like chia pudding, or we can add these sorts of seeds into smoothies, into pancakes. Again, thinking about, what does my child already like? They love pancakes on a Sunday morning. Let's try adding some chia seeds or some flax seeds or some hemp seeds and see if we can boost the nutrition of that meal. Maybe we can also think about adding a variety of different flours into the pancake mix. So I think a good place to start is to think about the meals that your kids already like and how you can make gradual changes to improve the nutrition of those meals, whether it's fibre, whether it is, adding more variety of ingredients, and the other things that we have talked about in today's episode as well. So I hope you found this helpful. I would encourage you to think about one thing that I've talked about that you can take action on. I will pop some links in the show notes to some of the products that I've talked about today as well. The beef liver powder, there's a couple of different brands that I like of those. I'll make sure I link at least one of those in the show notes, and also the seaweed flakes as well. So you've got that real some solid, I guess, brands and things, and where you can purchase those online in case you can't find them locally to you. Okay, that's it from me today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Happy experimenting with adding this extra nutrition into your family's meals, and I will be back next week with another episode. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.